All right, so I've had this fly in my ear.
Hey Dan, I think it's time for you to get a real amp modeler.
There it is again. All right, I get it. I got to step out of my 1970s time capsule, step into modern times, and acquire a real amp modeler for my studio here. But the question is, which amp modeler is really worth acquiring in 2023, going into 2024? We've got some options out there today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a short list. I've narrowed it down to a short list of units. I'm going to share some pros and cons, and I'm hoping that you, the viewer, can help me decide what the best amp modeler for me would be to acquire going into 2024. Why don't you join me? Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I really need you today, because I think it's true, that fly in my ear, that voice in my ear that keeps telling me that I need an amp modeler, I think it's true. Now, I've got a recording studio here. So for me, my interest in modeling is more as a recording musician. I don't really gig anymore, so my requirements are going to be specific to my needs. But I was resistant to the concept of modeling for a long time, and it was really ToneX that got me turned around. I think for the money, you get some of the best tones on the market with the ToneX platform, whether you're using the plugin, the app, or the ToneX pedal itself. And I love the fact that I can capture my own amplifiers. But it's time that I put a real amp modeler here in my studio. When I say real, it's something that will integrate into my studio here. I'm going to talk about the requirements in a second. So I've heard the voices in my head. I've heard my friends telling me that it's time to get an amp modeler, and I'm seriously considering it now. So like I said, I've got a short list that I'm going to share with you. We're going to weigh the pros and cons, and I really do want to hear from you guys to let me know what you'd love to see here on the channel, because I'm going to take your thoughts and opinions seriously, and I will read all the comments. So let's get into the list.
Hey Dan, it's John here from Sonic Drive Studio. Welcome back. Oh wait. Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, Dan, you really need a modeler, man, in your studio. And trust me, I love my tube amps as you do. We all love our tube amps. Tube amplifiers are wonderful, but modelers are all the rage these days. And I think if you have a good modeler, you will get some great fun out of it. And not only will it be very beneficial for your own creativity in your studio, it's also going to be a great tool to make videos with and to show people what you can do with such a device. Recreate certain famous artists' tones, or, show people about certain aspects of modelers that are very handy, like reamping, recording, for cable methods, and all that stuff. So you really need one, man. And, digital and analog, those worlds can live together in harmony, so there's nothing to worry about there. And now it's just a matter of deciding which one is the right one for you. I mean, do you need one with a touchscreen? Do you need one that is able to make captures? Do you need one with many amp models but is a bit, tougher to handle? Or do you need one that's very easy to use with many great effects and tones? And man, it's a tough decision. Let me know if you need any help. Cheers and good luck, man.
All right, so what's really important are my requirements, because of course, tone, we're all chasing that tone, and whatever modeler that I choose has got to deliver great tones. And the gaps are getting closer and closer with all the different products out there. And for me, because I'm recording and mixing it, you get into the weeds. Some of those things are not even noticeable when you do get into the mix situation. So it goes without saying we want to have good sounding tones. But I want something that's going to become the hub of my studio. I want it to be my audio interface. I want it to have good signal routing. I want it to be able to play nice with my existing amplifiers, because I'm not giving up on amplifiers. I do a lot of reamping and things like that. So it's got to be a versatile device that'll give me everything from great tones, be a great audio interface, good signal routing, and have a lot of inserts and things like that. But something that's also very important in my decision is that I do have a YouTube channel here, and I'm not selfish. I'm always trying to feature products or techniques or things that are going to help you, the viewer. That's why I'm here. I'm not here flaunting or selling my music, because I don't really push my own music. I create music for my channel, but I'm not selling any music. I'm trying to create an experience here that will help you, the viewer. So the product that I do put in here, it's something that has the possibility of, having recurring videos here on the channel, something that's got a great community out there that likes to share ideas, share presets perhaps. So I want that all-in-one device that will be the center of my studio, but will also be a good device that will allow me to enter a community and be able to be a contributing resource to whatever that community is. So that's something that's very important to me. So keep that in mind as we take a look at the modelers on my short list. So this is in no particular order. We're just going to pick these off one by one. So the first one I have on my list is the Quad Cortex. Now this is an interesting option because it's certainly social media buzzworthy. A lot of content creators are talking about it. Some notable YouTubers are using it. And it looks like a very versatile device. Now, what I like about it from the surface, now I've never used it, but I certainly watched a number of videos about it. It's one of those devices that can capture as well as obviously, providing its own presets, the ability to mix and match your signal chain and effects and things like that, which is critically important to me. It also has decent signal routing on it. I'm just looking at a schematic now where you've got 2 send returns on it. You've got balanced outputs, unbalanced outputs. You've got MIDI. You can add an expression pedal, a couple of inputs on it. So, and obviously with USB connection, I assume you can use it as an audio interface as well. So while it's not the biggest unit, it has good connectivity, maybe not the most. It is an intriguing unit. And the tones I've heard sound really great. And I think the biggest thing about it for me, other than the obvious, is that it's kind of buzzworthy. A lot of people are talking about it. Now, some of the complaints about the Quad Cortex, one of those have been remedied recently, was the lack of a desktop editor, which just recently came out in beta. I know people were complaining about that for a long time. And also the integration of their plugins into the Quad Cortex unit itself, which has been slow to happen. So I guess, they've really made strides and they've brought on board some really great personalities. And from what I've heard, it sounds amazing. Even the device itself with the dual function knobs on there, which is something that another device has inherited. We'll talk about that in a second. So a lot of great things about it. But like I said, the downside is the integration of their plugins and sort of the unknown in terms of how long that's going to take to come to fruition. But a lot of things to like about the Quad Cortex, some things to wonder about, but definitely worth talking about, and curious what your thoughts are on the Quad Cortex. So the newest player on the market right now is the Fender Tone Master Pro. Now, I'm not going to lie, I feel a little bit left out because a lot of my friends were contacted by a rep at Fender and got to feature it on their channel. And it seems I was overlooked. Maybe I'm not quite there yet, but it's definitely something that should be on my list. It's I think the biggest thing about the Fender Tone Master Pro being the newest, it's got a lot of horsepower. From what I understand, there's a lot of DSP in there. Fender's obviously forward thinking. This is something that they're hoping is going to be in the marketplace for a long time. Seems to be the case with a lot of these modelers. They need to live in the marketplace for quite some time. So it looks like they've packed a lot of DSP power in there in the hopes that if it's got some longevity, they can start building on the firmware and the software and just keep improving the unit. Looking at the device itself, I mean, it's got a ton of connectivity. I mean, 4 different send effects loops, which would be really, really handy here in the studio. Like I said, lots of ins and outs. You've got balanced outs, unbalanced outs, and we've got MIDI connection. There's even a micro SD USB. So again, I assume that it can be used as an audio interface. So it looks like it has a lot of connectivity. Now, the downside today, the fact that it's so new, the community is new. It's an important factor for me. Now, ultimately, I want the best unit for my situation here, but being a YouTuber, like I said, it's something I have to consider because I want to create content about it. Some of the other devices, and one which I'm going to get into next, have just really large communities. It's a tried and true system, and there's so much knowledge out there to share. And do I need to go down that path? On the other hand, being so new, inheriting or adopting something a lot newer and growing with that product could also be an opportunity. From what I heard, the tones sound great. There's not a lot of amps in there yet, but they're coming. Now, the biggest unknown for me with the Tone Master Pro is what's going to be, what's the cycle of updates going to be? One of the ones I mentioned, it was kind of a slow cycle of development. There's another one, which I'm going to talk about next, which has a very aggressive cycle of updating features. So obviously we want to see more amps in there. We want to improve, the firmware will improve certain, software to hardware functionality, and the software itself. I mean, it has a great looking interface. People are raving about that, but ultimately, how does the signal routing work? What are the options in there? That's going to continue to get better. Knowing that it has the horsepower, Fender is looking at this as a long-term product, but it's not proven yet. It needs to be adopted into the marketplace for that cycle to become more and more aggressive. So I love what I see. I've heard some great tones from it, but there's a big unknown in terms of the community. How big is it going to grow, and how aggressive is Fender going to be with this device? And a big feature for me, and I should mention on all of these, is the process of reamping. How well does that work? And that's important too. So if you've got any experience with any of those features, would love to hear from you. But do let me know your thoughts on the Fender Tone Master Pro, and do you think it would be something that I should consider here for my studio? All right, so the next one on my list might be the granddaddy of all of the modelers on this list, at least one of the two maybe, is the Line 6 Helix. Now, this is an interesting one because they've certainly been a leader in amp modeling technology for a long, long time. I mean, I had the Pod Kidney Bean way, way back. In fact, it was probably my first real interface. It wasn't really an interface, but I used to record with that, just taking the audio out into the just standard input on my PC. So really my first recording experiences were with Line 6. So I do have a bit of a legacy or history with Line 6 products. Now, Line 6 obviously has gone on to prove itself, later being acquired by Yamaha. There's a lot of resources there, and certainly a leader in the modeling industry, adopted by a lot of professionals, and it's a great unit. It comes in two form factors. We've got the rack mount version and the floor model, which seems to be the most popular one. I'm actually curious between those two. If I was to acquire a Helix, would you prefer me getting the rack unit or the floor model? That's something that I'd be interested to hear about. Now, there's a lot to like about the Helix as a physical device. There's a ton of routing on there for a studio application, for reamping, all those things that I want to do. You have all the connectivity that you need there. Obviously, it's an audio interface, and with all the ins and outs, I can monitor with it. I've got lots of room for different inserts, so I can insert plugins, 4-cable method with my amplifiers. As a hardware unit, it really, really intrigues me. And the Helix has a huge community. I could slide right into that community, start creating content, and probably be able to create videos for years on that one device. But here's my hang-up. We all know that this device came out in 2015. Now, Line 6 is extremely aggressive with their updates. I read about this all the time, new amplifiers, firmware updates. They have a great desktop editor. They have Helix native as well. So there's a lot of versatility in there from a physical standpoint that translates to the desktop, which is great for a studio workflow. But again, this device came out in 2015. In essence, this is a computer. 8 years for a computer is a long, long time. Now, while it's still at the top of the game, well, there are some devices knocking on the door. As I mentioned, Fender with that incredible amount of DSP. I've been told about twice the DSP that the Helix has. Don't quote me on that. But that means going forward, Fender's going to be able to do things with that device that the Helix might not be able to do. So I would assume at some point in the not too distant future, we're going to see a new Helix. I know everyone's saying no, but come on. Line 6 is a leader in amp modeling, and they're not going to get left behind. They're probably pretty tight-lipped about it, but I think it's safe to assume that we're going to see a new Helix at some point. So is it worth me getting on the Helix platform now, getting into the community, and then upgrading when a new one comes in? We're talking 2 acquisitions. But for me, I'm not sure. That's the only hang-up that I really have, because I really like what I see with the Helix. I've had some people tell me that's the device that I should get, but I've seen some other reviewers saying that it's starting to sound a little bit dated. It's amazing. Yesterday it sounded amazing, and today it's starting to sound dated. Look, I think you need to treat a modeler just like a real amplifier. You don't just turn on a preset and go. You're going to mix it and tweak it, because I don't just turn on my amps and go. I like to shape them. So that's something I'm going to consider with any of these devices. But the Helix is something that really intrigues me. I know it's got a proven track record. Line 6 has been very aggressive with updates. Helix users are very satisfied with the update schedule on the different features that get added and improvements on the device over the years. Probably the best from what I've heard, and that's great. But I can't help but be stuck on the fact that this is, in essence, a computer, and this was built in 2015, and Helix and Line 6 being a leader in this industry, they're not going to be left behind. At some point, we're going to see a new device, I'm sure. So is it the right time to get on a Helix now? That's something I really want to hear from you guys, because I've been given a little bit of a push in this direction, but I've got a bit of a hang up just because it's an older device. Let me know. All right, next I want to talk about the AXE-FXIII. Now, I have to admit, I'm very fully aware of the AXE-FXIII, but I have very little experience with it. What I do know about it is that it's expensive. It's considered a pro unit, and a lot of things I've heard about the AXE-FX from users is that it's one of the more complicated devices out there. So it's definitely a pro modeler, got live in studio applications. A lot of high-end pros are using AXE-FX, but what I hear about it is that it's complicated. Now, that doesn't really scare me because I'm pretty technically inclined. But from what I heard, it sounds good. I'm just looking at the schematic here, and there's a lot of connectivity here. Now, their philosophy looks a little bit different. There's a lot of inputs and outputs. It doesn't specifically say send return, but they are stereo. Can these be routed internally as inserts? I actually don't know. It doesn't actually say here. I'm looking at the back of the unit, but there's a lot of connectivity here. And assuming that there's different ways you can route that audio as an input, can it be routed as a send? I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. But with MIDI connections, and you've got SPDIF and USB, lots and lots and lots of connectivity on here. So obviously it's a great studio device. Now, if this is something that I had to purchase full price, it is probably the most expensive device, maybe top 2 here on the list, maybe the most expensive. And a lot of people just say it's really damn expensive. So I actually don't know a lot about the AXE-FX. If you've got anything to offer me on this device, I would love to hear from you. Also, there's the floor model, the FM9, which could be a possibility as well. It's a little bit cheaper, I think. I don't think it has as much connectivity as the rack unit does, but certainly that's something perhaps I should consider as well. So don't know a lot about the AXE-FXIII. Would love to hear from you if you have anything to insert into this discussion. All right, last on the list, and it's one that deserves to be on this list, and that's a Kemper. Now, that's probably the granddaddy of profiling amplifiers. A lot of great things are said about the Kemper. Some people really love it, but one of the downsides about the Kemper that I hear is that, I mean, there's tons and tons of profiles out there, but sometimes you gotta wade through a lot of garbage to get to the good ones. Because the thing about a Kemper, if you get a great profile, it's a great profile. But if you have a bad profile, it's a bad profile. Now, as I've said, that my main use is studio work, and looking at the schematic here, there's some decent connectivity. I'm looking at the back, not as much as a Helix, so not quite as versatile in terms of a routing device. Can you use a Kemper as an audio interface? I'm actually not sure. I would assume so. There's USB connectivity. I mean, there's a lot of legacy with this device, but some people say it's starting to get a little bit archaic, a little bit old. There's some newer philosophies that have come out. People have, really improved upon, user interfaces and things like that. Definitely something I want to consider. I mean, there's certainly a Kemper community out there. Is it as robust as the Helix community? That is important to me. I've heard it's not hard to use, but profiles are profiles. Good is a good one, bad is a bad one. Is it the right thing for me? Because I want a studio device that's just going to handle the workload here as an interface, as a routing device, as a reamper. Can you reamp with a Kemper? I'm not actually sure. I'm sure some of you out there can let me know. So anyways, Kemper is definitely a consideration for the right reasons if it needs to be here in my studio, but I'm not completely sure. But it definitely deserves to be on this list. So I would love to hear your thoughts about the Kemper. Well, there's my short list of modelers that I'm potentially considering for my studio. Now, your input is really, really important to me. This YouTube channel is a shared experience, and I want to dive with 2 feet into a community. I want to be able to provide some good resources. Of course, I need a device that's going to work well here for my studio. I've stated what my requirements are, and I can't compromise on that. But I certainly want to get a device that's going to service my workflow here, but it's going to give me something that I can, create and contribute to a community out there. So what you guys have to say is important to me. Obviously, I'm not going to appeal to everyone. You're all going to have different ideas, but it all counts, and I want to hear from all of you. Please let me know in the comments, and I'm going to read all the comments. So anything you have to say, please don't be shy. Comment section. Anyways, we'll see where this story goes. I'll definitely keep you updated as I wade through all of this. But I certainly hope you've enjoyed this discussion. If you have, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. And I'll catch you in the next one. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end, I'd love to know who you are. Perhaps you can let me know in the comments. Don't forget to check out another video. I've got one waiting for you right here. And the description is full of all sorts of ways to support the channel. Affiliate links, I'm on Patreon, and I've got merch. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video.